So about 6 or 7 years ago, I'm sitting on a chairlift with my good friend Matt Hansen, and he says, "Yeah, I got this guy I want you to introduce you to." So we're riding up a chairlift at North Star. There's Matt right there, and this crazy guy gets on there and goes, "Yeah, man, there's this life to be lived, and I'm just doing it to the fullest, and I'm just getting the goods, and I just love life, and it's so awesome, man." And we got to the top, and I go, "Dude, we're from the same tribe." And we've been great friends ever since. This guy is incredible. If you're in Silicon Valley and you go to a venture capitalist and they listen to 100 ideas and they turn down 99, and the 100th idea they go, "Wow, that's a great idea. We're going to give 20 million, 100 million to your idea." They call in Chris Lochhead and his company, Play Bigger Advisors, to take you to market. He's an incredible, gifted speaker, most generous guy. He usually charges $10,000 for a keynote, and he instead donates to our nonprofit to speak here. You guys seeing a trend here? Yeah. So anyway, and the reason we do that is so we can make this so affordable and have people. Usually these things cost a heck of a lot more. So anyway, without further ado, I want to bring you the best mind in the tech world and not a shy bone in his body, Mr. Chris Lochhead.
Thank you, Timmy. After that, I sure hope that this doesn't suck. And I want to thank you for being here. And first of all, Timmy shared his vision for One Life long before it was One Life on chairlifts and in the backcountry, talking about what he wanted to do next. And so it's been a real privilege for me to be involved since before One Life was even One Life. And to see 200 or so people here today and have our third annual conference is really awesome. And the thing specifically I want to thank you for is most people will spend more time watching TV this week than working on their life. And so it's pretty amazing, but it's true. So the fact that you're here investing your time in building your life and creating a life that you want to have is pretty awesome. We'll start with Dr. Seuss this afternoon. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. We'll go to Maslow. Many of you might have heard this, but it's this concept of self-actualization. And you could argue that self-actualization is the biggest accomplishment one individual can make, which is becoming what's possible or realizing the potential for you to become everything that one is capable of becoming, is what Maslow said. So the question is, how do you do that? Now, most of us go through life and we're unaware of the biggest thing that impacts our ability to be self-actualized. And that's this thing called our context. We know as human beings we have arms and legs and body parts and all that stuff, but we're not really clear about our context. So let's talk about what it is. It's built on our attitudes, assumptions, and opinions and beliefs and experiences. And it acts as a filter through which we process life. So, anybody here have a political persuasion? Okay, so that's a label that you have. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a Green Party member, I'm a separatist, I'm a communist. By the way, I'm sure the NSA is listening today, so I'm definitely not a separatist or a communist. I've started putting on some of my emails, "Hi NSA, I love America," just as part of my signature, just in case. There's a lot of talk in the tech business about that right now. Okay, so what happens is you and I filter the present through our context. And for the most part, we're not aware of our context, and we certainly don't challenge it. Most of the things that we assume are true are things that are in our context that you and I don't think about very much. There was a point in time on this planet where people thought the planet was flat. And that wasn't something they thought, it was something that was true. And so a lot of things change, and we realize that our context is not right. So the first thing about living a legendary life that I would share with you is, number one, to become aware of our context, and number two, to begin to challenge it. So Our context is typically built of these things. And let's do a little example. Raise your hand if you have an attitude about something. Okay, very good. Anyone want to share with us what they have an attitude about? Bad customer service. Great, I have that one too. Who said that over here? Okay, hi, Jennifer. When did you develop that attitude? Roughly. In your 20s. And you were in your 20s. That was part of your 30 years ago. And 30 years ago is part of the past. Very good. So here's what happens. You and I have experiences in our past from which we form attitudes, assumptions, opinions, and beliefs. And then when things in our present happen that remind us of those things from our past, we're no longer in the present. So if you call, I'll do one of my favorites, see if you and I have the same favorite, American or United Airlines. Okay, they are in a death match to see who can be there's a word that begins with S, but I'll just say lousy instead because we're G-rated today. The lousiest airline in the country, right? And when you call them, you're almost for sure. You know before you call, you're actually pre-pissed off. Right? You don't get a human being and you got to hit 4 and 3 and wait. And I'm sure they test that music to make sure that it is the most irritating music, like I want to bomb a town kind of music. Right? So what happens is we have experiences in our past, and when things in our present remind us of those, we're actually no longer in the present. We're filtering the present through this thing called the past, which is what our context is made up of. Now, there's certain circumstances where that's awesome. Raise your hand if you're employed. Excellent. You are employed partially because your context, your attitudes, opinions, your knowledge, your experience allows you to do things in your job that if you did not have those experiences, that knowledge, those capabilities, etc., you probably wouldn't be able to do that. And so, in part, you get paid to apply your capability that was acquired in the past to current situations to produce a result in the present and into the future for which they give you a check. Yes? So that's really good. And there are many ways in which our context helps us. Anybody drive here today? Yeah. Now, do you remember when you learned to drive? Remember learning to drive? What was that experience like? Terrifying, right? It's like, oh, thousands of pounds of steel and glass moving at high speeds. And I don't really know what I'm doing, right? And everything's very like in your face. There's the steering wheel and the gas and the brake and the clutch if you got that and the windows and the mirrors and all that. And then can I do left on a red or not, or the signs of all that stuff, right? And when we're first learning to drive, we're pretty freaked out by all of it, right? It's very up in your face. And when you drove here this morning, how much anxiety did you have about the driving part? I mean, you might have had anxiety about coming to One Life Fully Lived, but about the actual driving here. Have you ever had the experience where at the end of maybe a long day, you drive home, and if you're like me, there's a few different paths you could take to get to your place, and you pull into your driveway or your garage, and as you're pulling in, you kind of go, how did I get here today? Like the whole thing is just like a who knows how this happened, right? And they call that being unconsciously competent, which is to say when we're learning to drive, it's like, and everything. And then now our context, we are so driving context rich that we forget how we even got here because it's second nature. We're unconsciously competent. So what's my point? There are situations where having a rich, powerful context actually makes a giant difference in our life. What are the situations where having a context actually is an inhibitor to our life? Somebody told you no or you can't. I love this one. So, you and I have other human beings who, we're wearing name tags today, right? You and I, particularly when we're younger, although it can happen at any stage of life, somewhere along the line, other human beings put stickers on us. They go, oh, you're good at math. I never got that sticker, by the way. Or, you're just not that coordinated. Maybe baseball's not for you, right? Or some of us were told we were stupid. And some of us were told we were awesome. And everything in between. And we make an unconscious choice to wear those stickers. If you have conversations with people, as I'm sure you've been having today, some people will say, well, people today here have been talking about, financial freedom. I don't understand money, so that's not possible for me. That's not true. Now, we think it's true because it's embedded in our context, but that is as true as the world is flat, only we don't challenge that assumption. Said in a simple way, we wear the sticker that someone else put on us. Because maybe we were 5 at the time, and that was a parent or an uncle or a teacher or whatever, and we haven't challenged it very much, if at all, since then. So, our context doesn't work when it limits us from seeing what's possible, and it doesn't work when we're stopped in life and we can't go where we want to go. So, what I've learned is, if you're going to have a breakthrough in your life, if you're going to have the life that you really want to have, the first thing you have to be able to do is challenge your context and be willing to be wrong about it. See, if you say, oh, there's only so successful I can be, there's only so happy I could be. I know people in life who say, hey, listen, life's about compromise. No one said it would be easy. It's a struggle. The economy is not good now. The other one, nobody's making any money in Reno now. Right? And you hear this stuff, and we just accept this stuff as true. Right? Well, maybe not. That's someone's opinion. And so we have to challenge our own opinions. We have to challenge the stickers that get put on us. And most importantly, we have to be willing to be wrong. See, most people would rather be right and a failure than wrong and a success. See, let's say with fitness. Fitness is something super important to me. I love to ski with Timmy and Matt and all my friends in Tahoe, and over the last several years I've learned to surf, and being physically active and being in the physical world and Mother Nature is incredibly important to me. And so fitness has actually become more and more important to me over my life, right? And all of us have challenges there. And you say, well, there's only so fit I could be. Okay. You can't go surfing for 10 days in a row when you're 45 years old for 7 hours a day. Okay, you're right. Most people would rather be right than successful. Most people would rather be right than happy. Do you have any loser friends? We all have some loser friends, right? And that sort of a conversation with them is a little bit like those old Monty Python skits, if you remember them, right? That I had to walk 12 miles to school uphill in the snow without any shoes. Oh yeah, well that was luxury, that whole thing. And you get together with them for a beer or coffee at the end of the week, and they go, oh, man, did I have a lousy week? My boss, and the commute, and the and then someone else will go, oh, yeah? That's nothing. What did I tell you about my week? And they get into this insane competition for who has the crappiest life this week. Right? And they're buried by this negative context. And so legendary people are aware of their context and take responsibility for it and are willing to be wrong. I'd rather be wrong about my fitness, my math, my ability to be successful, my ability to be happy, what's possible in a relationship for me. I'd rather be wrong about that and be happy than right and miserable. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to challenge your context with me this afternoon? There might be a lot of things you end up being wrong about. Now, by the way, I'm not suggesting for a second that I'm right. Actually, right and wrong, you could argue, is not the appropriate paradigm. But I'm just kind of teasing you with it. Are you willing to challenge and stretch your context to see if something else is possible? It's interesting. I live part-time in Tahoe and part-time in Santa Cruz, mountains and waves. And this fall has been amazing in Santa Cruz because we've had tons of whales, tons of seals, and tons of birds because for reasons the marine biologists can't tell us, there's a massive amount of anchovies in the water right now. And you don't have to be a marine biologist to figure this out. As a surfer, you paddle out in the water, take one sniff, and you know there are anchovies in the water. And you don't even need to do that. You can stand on shore and watch the whales, and it's like a Alfred Hitchcock movie gone insane. And you watch all of these animals feeding, and you go, this is an incredible thing that they're seizing on this opportunity. And you go, well, why is this happening? There's a new possibility that's occurred that nobody can figure out, and the marine biologists have no context for it. So nobody can give them an answer in a world where people are always paid to have an answer. So right now they're sitting there, and I don't know that I'd say they're wrong, but they don't have an answer for why the anchovies are there, people who are supposed to be experts. So my point is, it takes a willingness to be wrong. It takes a willingness to be challenged. It takes a willingness to explore something new. Now, if we're going to do that, let's have a conversation about people, and particularly people in this part of the world. And this might sound harsh, but sometimes the truth is harsh. Most people in our culture make an unconscious choice to be unhappy at work, fat, poor, and watch 2 months of TV every year. And here are the stats. 55% of Americans are not happy at work. 10% of Americans are on antidepressant drugs. 68% of Americans are obese or overweight. The average American makes $32,000 a year. I think the median household income is around 45-ish. Only 27% graduate college with a bachelor's. And the average American watches 28 hours of television a week, which is a serious part-time job. And if you're 65 years old, you've watched 9 years of television in your life. And I know the voice is fun, but like, really? Okay, but that's most people. Now, let's talk about young people, what are called the millennial generation. Raise your hand if you're a millennial. Okay, well, here's the bad news. My generation did a lousy job with your generation because most sociologists say that this current generation is forecasted to be the first in American history that will be less well off than their parents. Now, I personally think I know where this started. You know those little plastic things that you stick inside the light, the power socket, the fixture? You know those plastic protectors? That's where it all started, right there. Because this is what started, you heard the term helicopter parenting? See, because I think the reason my generation has failed the millennial generation is we coddled the snot out of them. Okay? Good try! Good try! Good try! Good try! You struck out! The first time I went to my nephew Lucas's baseball game, his team was batting first. We're cheering them on. The opponent, the opposition gets up. Their pitcher's getting ready. As their pitcher's getting ready to wind up like this, I start going, hey, batter, swing! Your mother is a hamster, and all this stuff, right? And my adopted brother Al goes, and like, what do you mean? You can't do that. What do you mean I can't do? You can't heckle the other team. There's a positive environment. We don't even keep score here. Right? So it starts with those little protectors. When we were kids, we didn't have those protectors, right? What'd we do? Yeah, and did you do it again? No. But today, the little sweethearts never get to shove it in there and go, because we saved them from all of that. All right, so let's talk about the truth about most people. And those of you who were with me earlier today, I shared this with you, but I'll share it with the broad group. When I say most people, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about me. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about most other people. Okay? So it turns out there's only three kinds of people in the world. You ready? There are those who suck. There are those who don't suck. And there are people who are legendary. Now, I know some of you are thinking the voice of your context is going, oh, that's harsh, that's mean, or that's not true. Well, let's think about it. You see a movie lately or a TV show lately? If you go see a movie, what do you say after the movie? It sucked. It was okay. It was awesome. You go to a restaurant, what do you say? Great restaurant, want to go back? I don't know, and terrible. What do we say about people? That person was okay. I don't know. Kind of smell bad, look bad. I think might have been slightly retarded, not sure. Or they were awesome. And so whether we want to admit it or not, we as human beings put things in buckets. And those are the three buckets. And whether it's when you're shopping for a car and you do a test drive, or a movie that you saw, or a meal that you just had, or a person that you just met, or if you're interviewing people to come work for your company, these are the buckets. Now, I've tried for 25 years to get VPs of human resources in major corporations to use this as the performance appraisal methodology in the company. It's not really, I've never been hired to run HR. I've never had HR people ask me to advise them on anything. But the reality is, this is the truth, right? And so as you think about everybody in your life, you actually, whether you realize it or not, already have them in these three buckets. The question for you is, which bucket do other people put you in? And which bucket do you want to be in? So let's talk about what's the difference between people who are legendary and people who suck and don't suck. And fundamentally, it's this. People who are legendary make a daily, conscious choice to be legendary. They make a daily decision. They act on that decision. They do things that most other people are unwilling to do. Suck and doesn't suck is an unconscious surrender that takes place slowly over time. Have you ever seen a child? These little human beings. You ever seen one? So think about a child that's sort of somewhere between 3 and 8. And they're just like infinite possibility. And what do they want to be? They want to be a doctor, they want to be a fireman, they want to be Batman, they want to be whatever they want to be. They have these big dreams, and none of them go, I want to work in a cube, be underpaid, and hate life, and take altering medication. There's no 4-year-old that says that, right? They want to be an astronaut, or a fashion designer, or Batman or whatever it is, right? But nobody says, yeah, I want to get old and be overweight and suck and be married to a person I hate and, have ex-spouses and child support and all this stuff, right? And so what happens is when you and I are little, we're infinite possibility. We have all these hopes and dreams. And for most people, bit by bit over time, without realizing it, they accept other people's disempowering context as truth, and that truth undermines their aliveness such that they unconsciously, slowly give up. And they wake up at, you pick the age, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, and they go, wow, my life sucks. And you know what? Here's the truth. If your life sucks, you suck. Isn't that great? Write that down. What did I come here and learn today, huh? If my life sucks, it means I suck. Awesome. We do have the knives for the slitting. There'll be a group wrist slitting when we're done. Yeah, and so the difference is conscious versus unconscious. So if you think about, for example, David's session earlier today about goals, and there's been a tremendous amount of talk about goals and visualization and affirmations and all those good things, what that's really about is retraining our context to create a context that works for us, and as a result, making a daily conscious decision to live the life that we want to live, as opposed to the unconscious decision to just slowly slip into suck or doesn't suck. So who says you can't have it all? Who says life's about compromise? Who says it has to be a struggle? Who says? Anybody here a Spinal Tap fan? Those of you young people, there's about 3 to 5 movies that could teach you everything you need to know in life, and that's one of them. And in Spinal Tap, an interviewer asks the bass player what their philosophy in life is, and the bass player says with his bogus British accent, have a good time all the time. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a culture where if you were having fun, and you were having fun for any length of time, you felt guilty about that. Because life's not just supposed to be fun. Life's like you need to, work hard and sacrifice, right? Life's not fun. Who says we can't have it all? We live in the United States of America. 800 million people on planet Earth do not have access to clean water today. Today. I'm originally from Canada. I became a naturalized American a couple years ago, so I'm an American citizen now. And a very proud one. I was not here illegally, but that's a whole other conversation. And how I feel about this country is best represented in a quote. I don't know if you remember the baseball player for the LA Dodgers years ago, Fernando Valenzuela, and he said, "America been very, very good to me." And America's been very, very good to me. And I think that this country offers an opportunity that very few other places do. Not that Canada isn't a wonderful country full of opportunity, but this place in particular. And the reason I share this with you is twofold. Number one, with most of our work in the technology industry, it's with entrepreneurs and the venture capitalists who fund those entrepreneurs. I find it stunning that roughly 60 to 70% of the entrepreneurs we talk to are not native-born Americans. And the conclusion that I've come to, and I don't mean this critically, but the conclusion that I've come to is most Americans take no advantage of being in America. And I'll tell you this, guys, when you're sitting in Sacramento, and I forget the name of the building, but it was in one of those huge sort of buildings in downtown Sacramento, and in my case, I was there with about roughly 1,200 people, the vast majority of whom were not from Canada. Okay, like, oh, I've been oppressed by all the A's and the Molson, and I had to get out, eh? That's not like where they're from. They're from places where they're politically oppressed. They're oppressed because of their religious beliefs. They're oppressed because of their sexuality, or they're refugees. And they had to do something extraordinary to get to this country. And when you sit in a room that big with that many people, and they become American citizens, and we become American citizens today, and you see entire families bawling their eyes out because this is an achievement that they worked on for well over a decade in many cases, and some of them are from countries I'd never even heard of. You sit there and you go, wow. Right now in Syria, in Damascus, Syria, there's nobody sitting at a One Life Fully Lived conference. Right? They don't have that opportunity. We have an opportunity, particularly here, to design and then live the life of our choosing. And is our country perfect? Absolutely not. Another problem, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But we won the life lottery the minute we were born here. We were not born in downtown Syria, and it sucks there right now. And it's going to suck for a long time, and it's not their fault. So my point is not only do we as human beings have an incredible opportunity to create our lives, we have an extra special one living here. And the thing that saddens me is I think the average person, this is just my guess, the average person sitting in that room that day a few years ago with me in Sacramento will exploit the opportunity that is America in a way that the average American never will. And you kind of go, wow, what a bummer. Okay. Unreasonable. We've all been taught to be nice. Political correctness has taken over our culture. And the reality is, legendary people are unreasonable. They're unreasonable in their audacity around what they can achieve and accomplish, and more importantly, the satisfaction, happiness, and relationships they can build in their lives. George Bernard Shaw said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." That's about smashing context. That's about not accepting the status quo, whether it's your own personal status quo or the status quo for the world in which we live that's not okay with you. Get the world to adapt to your unreasonable position. Here's one of my current most favorite unreasonable human beings on planet Earth. Do you know who this gal is? You heard about this? You remember that she failed 4 times? She wanted to swim from Cuba to Miami. First of all, that's insane, right? And she kept failing and failing, and the sharks and the jellyfish. And remember, do you see her face? Remember, she was all and screwed up looking and they had to create that suit and blah, 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 and her lips and the whole thing, right? And I don't know why, but Diane was motivated to do this, and she didn't give a you know what, and she just went out and finally made it happen. That's completely, totally unreasonable. Richard Bach, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. Argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. You know, I just can't really be happy. It's just too hard. See, I had a real lousy childhood. Okay, you're right. You get to be right. You get to be miserable. You get to be right. Is it so much to ask for you to be wrong and happy? Now, in our culture, what are two limitations that show up for most people that they don't believe are contextual, i.e., an opinion that they have, but they take as truth? Correct. Money and fear. Oh, well, you know, I really would have gone for it, but we couldn't get the money together. And fear, what are we afraid of? Well, we call it failure, but it's actually not failure. What is it? Looking bad. Thank you, David. We want to look cool. We want to look good. We want to look like we have our whole thing together. And by the way, if you're somebody whose thing is I look bad, that's how you look good. Right? There's some people, I'm sure you don't know anybody like this, but maybe you've heard of somebody who they're like a professional victim in life. Oh. You know, you ever had somebody walk in the room, and the minute, they don't even have to say anything, they walk in the room, and all of a sudden, they're like a life-sucking vortex from hell of energy? That's because their negative context is so powerful, they don't need words to communicate the horribility of their personage. They walk into the room and they just project negative context onto everything. Everybody could be having a party, it could be total Mardi Gras, and that person walks in the room and like everyone wants to commit suicide. You know that person? Yeah. So it's fear, and it's mostly fear of looking bad. And some of us look good by telling people how miserable our lives are. So there's been some discussion today about financial freedom. And I'd like to share with you, there's a very simple secret to making an embarrassingly large amount of money. Now, I'm only going to share it with you if you're willing to be wrong. Because you might have this massive upset once you hear this called quadrupling your income this year. And that might be upsetting because it would challenge the core of your identity, your relationship with yourself. Because if you've spent the last 40 years developing this incredible, powerful context called I don't have any money and money sucks, this might screw all that up. So I don't want to upset you that way. Be legendary at something that very few people will do that creates a massive amount of value. That's how people make money. I'm amazed they don't teach this in school. Be legendary at something that most people won't do that creates a massive amount of value. You know, whenever a big sports star gets a big contract, you know, somebody comes up and pays whoever $50 million a year to swing a baseball bat or throw a football. Everybody goes, that's not right. You know, our teachers only make 25 grand a year, and that's not fair, and our system's all screwed up, and how can they make that much money for chasing a ball around and playing a kid's game? That's why. You may not like it, you may not think it's right, but why it happens is because they are very good at something that very few people can do at the level that they do it, and the thing that they do creates a massive amount of value, i.e. a lot of people buy tickets and ads to watch that dude play with that ball. I don't know about you, nobody pays a lot of money to watch me play with balls. That was still PG, Timmy. Get your minds out of the gutter. And so, as you're looking at your careers, this is what I'd tilt you towards. Because that's why athletes make what they make. That's why CEOs make what they make. That's why legendary real estate investors make what they make. They get really good at something that most people can't or won't do, and they figure out how to take that thing that they're good at and make sure it creates a lot of value. And if you're very good at something that very few other people can do that creates a lot of value, you're going to get paid very well for it. Okay, but that's all great, but what do I do about all that other stuff that stops me? And we all have our baggage. We all have our woe is me childhood experiences when we didn't get picked for the team, or we got picked on by Jimmy, or you know, we had our issue, or one of our parents was our and all that stuff. And some of that stuff is very serious stuff. It is. And some of us need to go get help to deal with that stuff, myself included. But the Dr. Philification of America is crushing us. And I don't have anything against him personally, but we are a nation that just wants to be effed up and wants to talk about how effed up we are and be in therapy to fix it. And we will reward each other for all the things we're doing to deal with all of our issues. And we have issue support groups and all this stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying there isn't value in those things. And some of us sustain psychological, emotional, and physical injuries that require emotional support, require therapy, and require some of those things. However, there comes a time, no matter how bad that stuff impacted you in your life and know how heavy the rocks are in the Samsonites that you're dragging around, there comes a time when we need to do something very powerful and very important. Get over it. And here's when you know you're over it. When you can't even stand your own BS anymore. You know, we all have those 2 to 5 stories we like to tell about why we're so screwed up and what happened to us and what hardship it's been. And we just spent all this time on Dr. Phil in therapy unpacking all the Samsonites, and you know, it's the Monty Python thing all over again. And all. We all have our stories about this. We're all the hero in our own story. And the greater the adversity the hero has to overcome, the greater the story and the greater the hero. And so we all invent this horrible set of issues that we've been dragging around. Right? When you can't even stand to hear yourself tell one more stupid story about, you know, what your dad did to you when you were 12, now we're getting somewhere. And for many of us, we can decide. Sometimes it's healthy to process that stuff, go back, relive it, and deal with it, absolutely. But we can decide right here, right now, this is the moment where, you know what, I don't care. I just don't care about my own crapola anymore. I'm over it. Because I am not my past. I am not my past. I am a brand new invention every day. Wayne Dyer says you can choose your personality every day. You could be a new person now. So for most of us, we need to get over it and get on with it. All right, so now I have a few ideas for how you might want to do that. The first one is, what's a very simple and yet very powerful design for building a legendary life? I think you can bucket everything that you've learned today in three things that are tightly coupled. Number one, what are the relationships I want to have? There's an extraordinary documentary movie. I beg you to go watch it. It's called Happiness. And one of the things in the movie, it's an actual study. It's based on a book called Flow, which is an incredible book. If you want to get a black belt in living a happy life, I highly recommend Flow. But one of the things that's very clear, there's no such thing as a happy person without friends. There's no such thing as a happy person that has relationships that are broken. Legendary people have relationships that work. There's no such thing as a lonely centenarian. It doesn't exist. So what are the relationships I want to have? And when you think about those relationships, last night I had a conversation with my nephew, and he's just broken up with his girlfriend. He's about 25, 26 years old. And we had this magical family weekend. Was that last weekend? Holy cow. Last weekend. And it was incredible. And my wife's parents were there, and her sisters and their kids. And we had this incredible time. And her father's in his 80s, and her mother's in her late 70s. And all the kids are cooking. The girls and my nephew are incredible cooks. Or incredible food, incredible wine, having this wonderful family time. And on the Saturday night, sort of the big dinner that everybody had kind of collaborated on, there's Phil, the head of the family, sitting at the table. There he is in his 80s, and he does this toast. And I don't remember exactly all the words he said, but I mean, he's absolutely beaming. And he says how lucky he feels to have this family and have this time, and that most people don't have families like this, and he feels like the luckiest guy in the world. And afterwards, I thought about it, and I thought, like, what else is there in life to be in your 80s, to be healthy, happy, and to have that situation, and to have it be real, not BS, real. So what are the relationships we want to have? Like, really, who are the people that matter to us, and why can't we have it all? So yesterday when I talked to my nephew about his breakup with his girlfriend, they broke up after this weekend. And what happened was the family dynamic was so powerful. This is a family that works. There's nothing broken in this family. That isn't to say there aren't problems and challenges and people don't. I'm not talking. No. But at the core, it works. They love each other. They have a good time together. They respect each other. They collaborate on things. They support each other. It's a very powerful, very successful family. And there was something about that dynamic that made this gal kind of nutty. And she sort of dynamited the relationship. Because for whatever reason, she's not in a position to have healthy, happy, successful, powerful relationships. And so they broke up. And I said to him, hey, congratulations. And here's why. This is a guy, 25 years old, who I think is great looking. He's physically fit. He's smart. He's driven. He's got a great career. He went to a great school. He's got a great job. He's doing well financially. He's living on his own. And he enjoys life today, and he's got an extraordinary future. And what I said to him was, hey, why wouldn't you be with the most legendary woman that you could think of? Like somebody who's going somewhere, who's committed, who has drive, who's smart, who has ambition, who's fun, who's playful, who's beautiful, who's sexy, that you love being around all the time. I told him that, That's the kind of relationship that's possible. And when you look at your grandparents, who we were with last weekend, that's what they've got. Phil and Jean are like, bang, in love. They have an incredible life, which they've architected together. I said, why would you settle for anything else? Why would you settle for a relationship with a woman that's anything other than awesome, that ticks every box? So what are the relationships we want in life? What are the experiences we want to have? Do we want to go skiing? Do we want to build a company? Do we want to be, where's my friend Stephanie? Do you want to be a legendary nurse? Right? What are the experiences you want to have? Do you want to travel? And the third one is, what difference do you want to make? There's a lot of talk today about giving back. If you go study happiness, what you learn, I went and I spent some time with a Stanford professor named Jennifer Aker, and she's a Stanford professor of happiness. And she said, there's nobody that's happy that isn't making a difference to their own children, to their community, to the world. Maybe they're like David and they're going around flushing toilets. Hey, man, you better stay in there. And if you think about it, those three things go together. Because if you're like most people who want to have a legendary life, the experiences you want to have are materially better when they're with the relationships that matter to you. Like, I think about some of the things I'm passionate about. Take surfing, for example. I just got back from a great surf trip, and I was there with a group of my buddies. We had incredible waves, best surfing of my life. And while I enjoy surfing alone, and I sure do, sharing that experience with your buddies is like nothing else. Matt and I, with a group of buddies this year, a week before the horrible fire in Yosemite, went rafting on the Tuolumne. We had an incredible experience. Well, if Matt's not there, would I have had fun on my own? Sure. But you can't even calculate how much better it is. When I go skiing with Tim, do I ski alone sometimes? Sure. So if you look at your own life, you say, well, what are the experiences you want to have? And inside that, the achievements you want. They go much better with relationships. It's kind of like, a really good Cabernet and chocolate. They go better together. And making a difference. There's no such thing as a happy person that isn't making a difference. And so, for me, the One Life event is a very real opportunity for us to take a break from the busyness of life and say, how do I design the most legendary life for me? And the guidepost, the true north, is relationships, experiences, and difference, and how those all intersect together. And when they all work together, that's the source of a legendary life. Well, you got to be legendary, and you got to make that conscious choice every day. You got to have, my new definition of success is when your life is so awesome that the number of people you can tell the whole story, the whole picture to, is actually very small, because most people would be pissed off if they heard the truth about how great your life is. We talked a lot about goals today. Legends have them, and make them happen. It's that simple. Now, we talked about context. This is a proposal to you. Instead of the context that gets thrust upon us that we accept as true, it's possible to proactively and creatively create our own context, one that works for us. So what might be in that context? And yours might be different, and I say this as a jumping off point. I'm successful, I'm alive, I'm creative, I'm authentic, I'm happy. Imagine happy as a state of being, not a place. Most of us have it that, like, when this happens, then I'll be happy. Like, I don't know about you, we've had 2 lousy snow years in a row. And so it'd be very easy for me to say, when it snows, then I'll be happy, right? Deepak Chopra says, the definition of true happiness is when you're happy for no reason at all. I consider myself incredibly lucky because I wake up in the morning and I'm way happy. Because I'm surrounded by people who love me that I love. For the most part, I do the things that I want to do in life, and hopefully I get to make a difference pretty much every day. And so I'm happy most of the time. When I got back from this surf trip, I was in some meetings and stuff earlier this week, and people said to me, how was your vacation? And it really struck me. It's not a vacation for me. It happened to be the thing that I did for 2 weeks. Because there was a point in time where I had vacations. And vacation, there's an unspoken thing about a vacation called, I need to run away, I need a break from my life. And, for some of us, it's because our life sucks or it's not what we want or whatever it is, right? And so, I need to get away and I need to, forget. And then I need to drag myself back to reality, right? And that's what most people mean when they say vacation. And it struck me that the surf trip wasn't a vacation. It was just a thing that I did for 2 weeks because the rest of my life is not something from which I need a vacation. As a matter of fact, when the plane lands, I'm as stoked to be back as I was stoked when I got to Indonesia to go surfing. That we're learning, that we're charitable, and not just giving money to charities, but charitable in the way that we treat each other. One of the things I love about the two communities that I'm a part of, Tahoe Truckee and Santa Cruz, is, you know what? People are just kind of nicer. In either town, if somebody honks at you at a stop sign or a stoplight, they don't live there. They don't. People in Truckee wave at you in the car. People in Santa Cruz, when it's your turn at the stop signs, or when it's not your turn at the stop sign, it's their turn, tell you to go. Right? Because people in these communities are happy. They're charitable in the way they interact with each other. Fun, powerful, fit, et cetera, et cetera. And so the question is, what's the context that works for you, not the context you've been given? And are you willing to consciously create it or allow yourself to unconsciously slip into a context that sucks? 5, coach. We've talked a lot about that today. Listen, it's very clear. The data's in. There's no debate. Legendary people have legendary coaches. Period. Period. Wayne Gretzky doesn't become Wayne Gretzky without a lot of help. You look at any actor, any athlete, any professional of any kind, if they tell the truth is they had a lot of help along the way. A lot of help along the way. I've had so much coaching in my life, I can't even begin to thank those people. And legendary people not just get coached, they coach. What's the best way to get better at skiing? Teach somebody else to ski. So these mastermind groups and these entrepreneur groups and all those sorts of things, groups that support people in being legendary, where people go back and forth on coaching each other, is unbelievable. And the amazing thing, if you get really into coaching, most people have it that, well, the master, Yoda, teaches the student, Luke Skywalker, and it's always that way. And that might be the case in some circumstances, but the reality is, in most of the coaching relationships in my life, even the ones where I'm professionally paid to be a coach, which is what I now do for a living in business, the reality is the coaching goes back and forth. If I look at my relationship with Tim or my relationship with Matt, sometimes they coach me, whether it's on skiing or life or whatever it is, and vice versa. It's not a master-slave relationship, right? Legendary people have their butts coached, and they also coach others. Do the work! We've created a culture in this country where everybody is lazy. Malcolm Gladwell wrote an incredible book called Outliers. In that book, he studied legendary people. And one of the conclusions he comes to in the book is, if you want to be legendary at something, 10,000 hours. You want to play guitar like Eddie Van Halen? 10,000 hours. You want to shoot hoops like LeBron? 10,000 hours. You want to surf like Kelly Slater? 10,000 hours. And we've created, and I don't know if it's because of the fast food or the infomercials or all the other instant gratification. Who was it who was talking about delayed gratification? One of the guys on the panel was, yes. I talked about it. Yes. Bang on. I'm still talking about it. It's the secret to life. And we have a culture that we just want the end result. We are unwilling to wait. My favorite one, is it Something About Mary? It's one of those movies where the psycho killer wants to do 6-minute abs instead of 7-minute abs. Remember that? It's like, we'll do 6-minute abs and we'll blow the 7-minute abs guys away, right? And then the guy sitting in the car next to him says, well, yeah, but what if someone comes out with 5-minute abs, right? And like all the stuff we read is like how to be, rich and sexy and all this stuff in 2 seconds or less, right? And we don't want to do the work. Well, guess what? If you want to play guitar like Eddie Van Halen, 10,000 hours. And the funny thing about doing the work is it ties back to the experience. It's a cliche about the journey, not the destination, but the experience of learning to play guitar and continually learning to play guitar. One of the things I love about surfing, I learned to surf late in life, way hard. Way, way hard. Like, other than business, kind of the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, no natural skill in this, clearly, because after 500 times, I still sucked. 500 times, right? It takes a lot to figure out how to get that board on that wave and then actually stand up and go, right? But the learning is an extraordinary thing. Jack White, the musician from the White Stripes, when they asked him why the band sort of broke up and what was the source of it, and he said, "We became professional musicians." He said, "When we didn't know what we were doing, we were way more creative. Now that we know what we're doing, we lost the magic." Right? In Zen, they talk about the mind of the student, that you're always a student. You're never the teacher. 10,000 hours, do the work. Talked about getting rich slow. Anybody remember who Jean-Claude Keely was? Legendary skier, won a ton of medals in the 60s and 70s. And I'll never forget an interview with him after he retired. He was talking about his retirement and what some of the things he was doing. And one of the things he was doing was he was learning to dance. He said, because I never learned to dance. Because all I ever did from the time I was born was ski. And he said, the other thing I'm doing is I'm enjoying summers. Because I did not experience a full summer until I was in my late 30s. Because I was always somewhere where there was snow. Because he was doing things that no others would do. Mike Tyson, I love this quote. Mike Tyson, at the height of his career, was asked why he starts his training at 5 a.m. He could start his training at any time during the day, right? He says, because I know the other guy is still in bed. Do the work. Fail. If it's worth doing wrong fast. Surfing, I've broken my nose. I've torn my ear open on the back of my fin. I broke the nose on the side of my board. I've been drowned 100 times. I've smashed my ribs on coral reefs, and. If it's worth doing wrong fast. Legendary friends. Tony Robbins says, you become who you hang out with. I need to know nothing about you to know you completely. All I need to know is I need to meet your significant other and your 2 or 3 best friends. And I know everything about you. And you know what? If your friends suck, you suck. Now, it's always good when you kind of take inventory of the people who suck in your life and you decide to flush the toilet on them. Keep the one that you kind of like around. Because we all need the special project, the rescue mission, right? There's a reason people rescue doggies and stuff. And the other one is, on those days where you're really not that legendary and you're feeling really lousy, go have a beer with your sucky, crappy friend. Love. There's a lot of people who think this is all life is about. Davian Marley says, love is my religion. Love life, love yourself, love others, love the world, and love your work. There was some discussion earlier today. Children naturally love, right? And somewhere in teenagehood and into young adulthood, that just disappears. That willingness to just freely be that way just disappears. Legendary people fall back in love with themselves and life and the world. Now, we live in a culture where we don't keep score at T-ball. I'm writing a new blog right now. I do some writing from time to time, and I'm writing about the lack of accountability. The CEO of BlackBerry just got fired. This guy did an unbelievably terrible job. They couldn't even sell the piece of crapola, and they've announced publicly that they're giving up on that. And they fired him, and he got $22 million. Catherine Sebelius just testified in front of our Congress and said, I am accountable. Good. You're fired! You're fired. You failed. It sucked. You failed. You get an F, and you're fired. You don't work here anymore. We don't pay you. You're fired. Right? You failed. Results do not equal no results plus an excuse. Legendary people hold themselves accountable to produce legendary results, period. They don't beat themselves up when they fail. It happens to all of us. But they hold themselves accountable, and they do not tolerate anything other than legendary results. Think about yourself in your life. Think about who you work with. There's some people in my life that I work with that I want with me for the rest of my life. And you know why? I respect them for a bunch of reasons, but it starts with one thing. They can be counted on to produce legendary results. And I don't respect people who don't. I don't respect people who can't figure it out in life. I don't respect people who haven't taken the time to create a life that works for them. I don't care how much money they make. But if you're somebody who's 50 years old and you're still completely confused and you've never done the work, do the work. Figure it out. Hold yourself accountable to your goals and go produce results. As a Canadian, we have an expression. It says, every once in a while, you need to put a moose on the hood. And I'll tell you, there is nothing greater in life than to train yourself to produce results. Michael Jordan said he trained himself so that when there's 2 seconds left and we need a three-point shot, I want that ball. Be that person who wants that ball. And you know the only difference between people who produce legendary results and people who don't? The people who produce legendary results go for it in spite of their fear. We all have the same fears. And people who suck and don't suck unconsciously surrender. Legendary people will not tolerate that BS. They want to be that person with the ball when it matters. We want to be people that we can count on for ourselves and for the other people in our lives to produce the results when it matters. Do you know the people in your life who, when the you-know-what hits the fan, they just like melt into a puddle and they're completely useless? Those people are useless. Is that who we want to be? Legendary people are not useless. Legendary people show up when it matters. They produce results. They hold themselves accountable. And when they're not, they say, I failed, and here's what I'm going to do about it. And they can't sugarcoat it, and we do keep score, because in real life there is a scorecard. Results do not equal no results plus an excuse. I don't even care how good the excuse is. Hey, man, it was snowing, and it was a full moon on Thursday, and I couldn't get the guy on the phone. He said he would be there, but he stood me up, and I dog ate the homework. And you know what? No, I don't care. You produced the results or you didn't. Period. You are your results. And the greatest, people say, well, I want to work on my self-esteem. Okay, good. You want to work on your self-esteem? Train yourself to produce results in the things that matter to you, whether that's your business or your education or your pursuits, whether it's skiing, surfing, or whatever it is for you. Train yourself to produce results. That's what produces self-esteem. When you know that you can count on you. The person who brushes your teeth, that person, when you're looking at the person who's brushing your teeth and you know that you can count on that person to produce results, that's what I'm talking about. Commitments. Legendary people make them and keep them. Man, raise your hand if commitment's your favorite thing. Right? We have this bizarre context in our culture that commitment equals limit. Commitment equals power. Because until I make a choice that commits me, I'm kidding. And I'm going to speak to the men in the room because I don't know what it's like to be a woman. Legendary men make and keep commitments. Legendary men put the moose on the hood. They can be counted on by their families to show up when it matters. There's no legendary man that I know that isn't great at that isn't acknowledged for being competent and successful in his field, that isn't acknowledged by his family for being there when it matters, when required, being a provider, being supportive, and meeting their commitments. That's what legendary men do. And I don't know why, but in our culture, we seem to make more legendary women than men. I don't know why, but we need to get on it. Chelsea Clinton just said something really powerful at the Clinton Global Initiative. She said, the biggest threat in the world is an unemployed, angry young man. Number 12, relationships, experiences, and difference. Legendary people not only do it for themselves, they sit down with their significant other, the person they're committed to in their life. They sit down with their other people that they're building their life with. I have a group of friends that I want you to bury me next to. With those people, not only have we sort of done some of this individually, but you then do it together. It's what Bennett Wong and Jock McCann called co-creation. I used to think the greatest thing in life was the ability to design your own life and then live that design out, have it come happen. And while that's awesome, you know what's way more awesome? Doing that, we talked about tribes earlier, doing that with your tribe, with your significant other, with the close people that matter to you. When everything that happens in your life of consequence is not an accident, because you co-created it with a group of people that you care about and love, that's power. That's a legendary life. And have an embarrassingly large amount of fun. Spinal Tap was right. The purpose of life is to have a great time all the time. Now, in completion, look, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it? Now, what if today's that moment? I saw on, you know how churches, a lot of them today have billboards? I saw one recently, I don't know if you've seen this one. It said, if you're looking for a sign, here it is. So what if, for whatever reason, your participation today is that moment for you to seize a whole new possibility in how legendary your life could be? And if that was true, are you going to seize it? With that, thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you.